Thank you. You may be seated. Matter of fact, you can say something, okay?
Certainly, first of all, let me say that it's an honor to have served in a leadership capacity with a gentleman as fine as Harold Haddock. He and I share a lot in common. He and I were selected by the church and voted on and ordained as deacons at the same time. So when I thought of, what can I say about Harold? What are some of the words I can use? And, a lot of words came to mind. Being trustworthy. Give him a task, it's done. He doesn't have to have supervision. What has he done? I heard a lot this morning in the pastor's sermon. But anybody that steps inside our sanctuary and looks forward up to the choir loft, what a beautiful walnut, whatever you call it, there in front of the chairs in the choir loft. That's his handiwork. It's great. He's working all the time. He's very industrious. The word dedication comes to mind. Certainly dedicated to his family and God and our church. He's faithful and loyal. If he's not in attendance, something's wrong. He may be on vacation. He may be visiting, family members or something. But he's going to have a reason for not being in church. There's no doubt about it. Is it quiet? Probably is, isn't it? But I think I was taught in English class something about when you were doing some coursework, some things you learn, still waters run steep and run deep and different things. There's a time and place for quietness, isn't there? He's not boisterous. He's not out seeking a lot of favorable comments for what he does. Not at all. Is he kind? I think we all agree. Do you see any joy or peace about him? Have you ever seen a frown on his face? Isn't that great? And the last word I'm going to use is patience. He must be patient. But I was reading in Colossians chapter 3, verse 12. It says this: as God's chosen people, holy and dearly beloved, clothe yourself with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. It doesn't say do that if you want to. Seek those qualities. Hopefully you can find them, but it's taught to us that we should have those characteristics. And I think it probably lists patience last, because you probably have to possess these other qualities. Or maybe with patience you can acquire these other qualities. I think personally that about every day, my patience are tested, whether I, am in the dollar store trying to just get one item and there's 3 or 4 people with buggies in front of me or what, But Harold was a man of many qualities, good qualities. And when I think about patience, I think of what he said in Sunday school class this morning about, painting one of the doors, metal doors here in the building. And I'm sure that's all he thought he was going to have to do. But in the process of painting that one, because it had metal doors, he ended up painting more. So, that's something that he didn't expect to do, but he didn't tell us that he did it in a manner that he complained about it whatsoever. So, Harold, we love you. You're a good person. We're so privileged to have known you and to serve with you. And hope you have many more years that we can associate together.
Psalms 37:23 says, "The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord, and he delights in his way." It's a verse that epitomizes Harold Haddock. And Harold, when I go into a church, I always look for some good men, not just deacons, but good men I can surround myself by. And when I came to First Baptist Charleston, started getting to know some of the deacons and some of the men of the church, Harold kind of stood out because he was one that, he was patient with me, and in anything that I would kind of get ahead on, as far as, building anything I wanted to do, Harold always had the right answer. And one day he invited me over to his home, and I just wanted to, I guess when I looked around and I saw all that Harold had done with his hands, with the talent that God gave him, it blessed me that he cares so much about people, not only his own family, not only his church, but also his neighbor. Anyone that come along, I believe Harold would help. I believe that Harold would just get in, have understanding and patient heart, and he was right about that smile. I've never seen Harold without the smile on his face. It's one of the things that always brightened my day. When I had a bad day as a pastor, or something was really stressing me a little bit, I could always look at Harold and he would have that smile. And I don't know if it snuck up on me, but one day I was in the office and I heard somebody clanging around. I thought, what is that? Someone's always doing something somewhere, and I was just in there having a quiet moment, and I heard something. I come out in the hallway, and Harold has got his truck backed up to the other side of the church. And this has always stuck with me. And I couldn't think of one thing we needed done around the church, that's just me. But Harold always sees the needs well ahead of anybody else, and I think that's the talent that God's given him. And he was out redoing the wood around the old sign, not this sign, but the old sign that's up the other side of the church. I said, "What are you doing, Harold?" And he said, "Well, I'm replacing these boards. This trim is starting to rot." Well, I would have never, ever seen that. But Harold was replacing it with some material that's probably going to last years and years down the road. Harold was thinking that somewhere down the road, the next generation, somebody wasn't going to have to deal with that. And that's just the kind of man that God has blessed this church. And if you're a friend of his, associate, or go to church with him, just know him from work or wherever, and you're blessed. You're deeply blessed by a man that God has put on this planet. But he's not by himself. I thank God for Mary and the family and for all that they do. And for about 3.5 years I was here at First Charleston, I just want to thank God for you and your family. You made things so much better than, years, when you start out about 24 years of age, start out pastoring a church, you learn a lot. But coming into this church years later, it was great to have someone here with all the other great men and women that just made life so blessed. And Harold, we love you. We love your family, and I hope that you will pass, and some of what you have passed on to me will be passed on to some other people. So if I could just get that, just a little, what you've done around here, looking out for others and loving others, being not selfish, pouring and investing in other people's lives, I hope they'll stay with a lot of folks. I love you.
Yes, but I overheard two church members a while ago, and one of them said, well, we hadn't eaten as a church so long we had to have some excuse. So somebody suggested we have Harold Haddock Appreciation Day. I'm just trying to be honest, Harold. In the time that I had the privilege of serving here, I got to know Harold and his dear wife, Mary, and those three precious daughters. And one of the many things I learned about Harold, if you see him even suggesting that he's smiling, he is hilarious. I mean, he is really having a ball. That's about all it ever gets. The other thing, I've been in a lot of apple orchards in my 75 years, and I've yet to find anybody that can grow an apple as big as Harold Haddock can grow. He even shared some with me. It's the reason I know. I still think about those big apples, Harold. It's hard to talk about a person like Harold without including his dear wife. Because we know the Bible teaches that when two people come together in love and they share their lives in love, they become one. So when you talk about Harold, you're talking about Mary. And when you talk about Mary, you're talking about Harold. And I just really appreciate having him and Mary and the whole family as church members when I was here. Now, these pastors here know that there are all kinds of church members. There are those church members that you worry about them all the time. You don't know what they're going to do, what they're going to say, what kind of problems they're going to create. And you just stay on your knees in prayer about those folks all the time. You're not there. One of you come up and say, I'm not one of those members. Then there are those members who, every once in a while they have problems. You have to deal with those things. But then there is that member. You never have to say anything. You never have to worry about them. If you do think about them and you pray for them, you usually pray, Lord, thank you for members like Harold Haddock. I never remember going to bed at night worried about what Harold might say or what Harold might do. It was always a joy and a pleasure when I was thinking about my work or preparing the sermon or whatever I was doing as a pastor, when I thought of Harold. Because I knew I didn't have to worry about him. And it was a real blessing to serve with him. And I hope, Harold, that I was a blessing to you and to your family in some way. Several years ago, a young couple, young minister and his wife, was called to this church. And everybody was excited about the young minister, the new minister. And they voted him in, called him his pastor. Well, when this one couple got home, the wife asked the husband, said, how did you vote? And he said, well, I voted to call the pastor, to call him. She said, how did you know to call him? What did you know about him? What did he say? What did he do? And he said, it wasn't him. She said, what do you mean? He said, I called and voted for this man because of his wife. She said, what are you talking about? You don't know her either. He said, what little I saw and what little I heard, I thought, if a man marries a woman like that, he can't be all bad. Harold, any man that marries a woman like Mary Haddock can't be all bad. And you've got 3 precious daughters, and now understand not only grandchildren, but great-grandchildren. You've been a great testimony and witness to all our lives. God bless you, and may your kind increase.
To think about Brother Harold and this situation. My mind went back to a man in the Old Testament by the name of Nehemiah. When you get home, I'd like for you to read the book of Nehemiah and think about Brother Harold Haddock. Nehemiah was a cupbearer, and he went to the king. He was concerned about Jerusalem. He inquired about Jerusalem. Jerusalem had a lot of things that needed done to it. First of all, the wall was completely down. In the middle of the night, Nehemiah went to Jerusalem to survey the situation. And God led him to lead the people in building the wall. It's quite interesting to know that already the sign's been mentioned on the other side of the church. When I came in 1972, that sign was in very bad repair. So evidently it's been all that time, Kenny, from I left here in 74 and went to Alabama. Brother Harold Haddock had repaired that sign. Some things began to happen. We bought the land where Alexander House was. We tore that down. We bought this lot where the old store used to sit. And there used to be a shell of a building back up here next to the railroad track. I contacted Southern Railway at that time in Knoxville, asked them if it'd be possible for us to tear that down. Part of it, most of it, was on the railroad. And I said the community would appreciate it and we as a church would appreciate it. They sent me a letter and gave us permission to do that. When the lot became available, I called Jody Lauderdale, who was the road commissioner, and I asked Jody, I said, would it be possible to get some dirt if you ever have any left over? And down in front of Harold Bozeman's house, they were digging out that embankment. And we were given 66 tandem truckloads of dirt in order to try to make way for the senior citizens to get into the building easily. Harold Bozeman sat down and drew up plans for a parking lot. First thing we knew, Brother Harold Haddock had figured out a way to run a conduit down to the power pole so we could have a light in the middle of the parking lot. I'd often said that if I ever pastored a church twice, the Lord would have to send me a telegram, hand it to me himself. He practically did that in 2003 when I came back. Brother Harold Haddock at that time saw the need for a sign down here on the corner. And they found a church in our community in Cleveland that had a sign almost identical to that one. He ran the conduit down to make sure the sign was taken care of and it would be lit. We were in deacons meeting one day. Brother Harold said, I put some buckets upstairs to keep the water, catch the water when it leaked through the roof. That's the type of servant Brother Harold is. waded out through the floodwaters and helped get that grand piano up off where it would not be damaged in the flood. Brother Harold, I love you and your family. Miss Mary, I want to thank both of you for your love for not only me, but for the community, and most of all for the Lord and His Word. You're a great example to not only me, but my family. My oldest son in Virginia, I told him what we were doing today. He said, Dad, those are the sweetest people around. Please share with them my love. We all love you. God bless you.
Opportunity to be able to say a word or two about Harold. I just soon not had to follow 3 preachers to do it. Nevertheless, we'll do that anyhow. And Brother Harold back here asked me a while ago, says, "Wouldn't you like to say something, and could you keep it brief?" That might be a miracle if I keep it brief, Brother Harold. See. No, I'll try to do that. I've known Harold for the last 48 years since he and Mary started coming to church here, and went to church with him for a long time. We've been in leadership together. We were both deacons at the same time. And we've attended church together. We've been personal friends all that time. And Brother Harold and I have a sort of a common interest in woodworking, as you probably know. And just one example I'm going to give you of the things that he did that I know about. One day we were in the church building. I don't remember if we were at church or what we were doing, or if it was just during the week and I was up here. And Brother Harold said, "Have you noticed the windows in the sanctuary?" He said, the wood's rotting out. And I said, "Yes, I have noticed that." And so he said, "Well, I think I'll see if I can find somebody that can build some new windows." So a few days later, he came back by and said, "Well, I've been out calling people, and nobody will take on the job of rebuilding those windows up there. They're not made anymore, and nobody's doing that." Well, that went by for a little while, and he called me one night and he said, "I think I'm going to try to see what I can do to one of those windows." And I said, "Well, that sounds good." So he took a window sash out and he put a piece of plywood in. He did it back to the back so it wasn't very noticeable. And he called me a few days later and said, "I got that window apart and the wood's just rotted in between the window panes. The little strips are." He said, "Do you think you could make those for us?" I said, "Harold, if you'll bring me a couple of them that are in good shape that you've taken out of that sash, I'll see what I can do." So he brought me those two little, a short one and a long one, and they were the same profile, so I managed to get pieces of wood that looked sort of like that, and made enough of him for him to repair that one sash, and he put it back together and stained it. He brought it back up and put it in the window. And before he was done, we had rebuilt all the windows in the sanctuary, all the big sashes. And he'll tell you today, I heard him tell somebody not too long ago, said, "Go with me in the sanctuary and look at those windows and you tell me which ones we worked on." And they did turn out looking really good. It was something that he did because he saw a need. He found the resources to do what he needed to do. It wasn't even easy to find those colored glasses to go back in where some of them were broken, but he did that too. And that's just an example of what Harold has done here at the church that I'm personally aware of. He's been a good friend all this time. In fact, Betsy and I are going on a little trip, and we get back in a couple of weeks. And I already got the arrangements made. Harold and I are going down to the woodworking show in Atlanta on the 22nd. And he's got to have some more tools and gadgets. He's got more than Norm Abrams already, but he's got to have a few more. And we went one time, and Betsy got a call while I was down there about the credit card. Somebody was using our credit card in Atlanta, and she says, "Well, my husband's down there, it's probably him." So every year when we start to Atlanta, Harold says, "Did you call the credit card company to tell them that you're going to Atlanta?" I said, "No, I'll let them call Patsy." Anyhow, Harold has been a big help here at the church. Not very long ago, in fact, it's probably been 2 or 3 weeks through, maybe a month ago. I ran into Faye Calloway with the Historical Society and the museum, and she says, "Have you been by to see the Energizer Bunny?" I said, "No, what's that?" She says, "Harold's working over in that building over there, and you need to go by and see what he's doing." So I did. And sure enough, I went in, and he was busy at work, and he's making that place really look great. And he did that just because it's something that he saw that needed to be done, that he thought he could do, and it would be a help to the community and a help to people in the future generations. I'm very proud to call Harold one of my friends.
Same Harold. If you've ever seen a earthworm when you pull it out of the ground, out squirming, watch him now. But actually, I thought this thing was for free, or I wouldn't show up. I never liked Harold that much myself. When I was here, we couldn't get him to do nothing. If I hadn't taken him under my wing, I don't know what would have happened. And I heard Harold, by the way, I had one Harold when I got here. Now you got 2. I think it's an epidemic that got here. 2 peas in the same pot. But he said he kept popping up, and he did, but I kept wondering, why did he keep popping up all the time? Couldn't get nothing out of him. Mary's Jewel. He's a jewel thief. I was over at their house one time. I don't know why, but I was over there. And I think they had an argument. But you know how soft he speaks, and she's just about that much higher. And there was either an argument or they're doing a mime act. I'm not sure which. But if it was an argument, Harold lost because he was sitting over in the corner. It looked like he was eating a bucket of persimmons or something. But seriously, Harold, I love you to death. I'm kind of old to have a hero, but I got one. I don't know what else to say. He just, I love him.
Thank you, Butch. Always need somebody to take the opposite direction and kind of liven this place up.
Waiting on the Spirit. I've heard a lot of good things said here today. Mighty good man. But I'm here to tell you that if I hadn't heard anything that was said, there's enough good reasons to do what we're doing today in honor of Harold Haddock without any of those. I've been in the Sunday school class with Harold for over 20 years. Taught the class for 20 years. Harold wasn't one to take the greatest part, but I can tell you this, when he took the part, it was worth taking. He's one of the most accomplished, non-controversial people I've ever known. I wish I had just 2% of that trait, because I know I'm negligent in that matter. Harold has given me some good advice without even knowing. I don't know, some time ago during a class, we had had a lesson and some discussion. We always started out with prayer and then mentioning people in the class with problems, personal problems, family problems, and so forth. And then when Paul Ballou would let us, why, he'd turn us loose while we would get on, with the rest of it. And Paul had his turn. Those of you that remember Paul. And, I don't remember the subject at all. But after the course was over, Harold came by, and I don't remember him saying anything at all during the class. But he said, Fred, said one of the gentlemen I worked over to meal with for a number of years. And said one day he came up to me and he said, in the affairs of life, a whole lot of what happens has to depends wholly upon whose ox is being gored. And I think there's some truth to that. Because if you, there's a sermon there. Those of you that like to watch the news, I'm sure, are familiar with the famous murder taking place. There's all the Nancy Grace deal. Well, let me tell you, there's people being killed all over the world. Bad deals, worse deals, killed individually, killed collectively, and killed off almost by a nation that hadn't had the coverage that that's had. Quite frankly, I'm turned off by it. Turned completely off. My wife won't even let me watch it. So, you say, how do I know Harold Haddock is non-controversial? I played around the golf or two with him. And you find out a lot about a fella on the golf course. I remember he hit one ball one time so far, we couldn't find it. They called it a lost ball. Insofar as all of these things that's been said about all the things that's been done, one thing I could say about him is a little on the sneaky order. Because you never really know these things are a problem until he's got a plan for fixing them. Kind of sneaky about that. That's good. We've got a world of complainers. He's not one to complain at all. But even if he hadn't have done any of those, see, he had some youngsters running around over school that I had the chance to observe over time, as well as a pretty dadburn good-looking woman, We had a little deal here a few years ago where we were going to something, Harold's birthday or something, I don't know. Got a little note or something, sent it. I sat down and I tried to think of something about Harold Haddock that I'd look good on a note, and I just couldn't go nowhere without going everywhere. So finally I decided the only thing that I want to say about Harold Haddock, I have to say about his whole family. It's a matter of class. You either got it or you don't got it. Let me tell you, to look at Harold, he's about as common looking as I am. But when you stand that family up by him, and you think of class, he's at the top of the class.
Thank you, Fred. Good job. Anyone else?